So thank you very much for the invitation, Kasia, and it's a pleasure to welcome all of participants. And I'm glad to see you here. But first, I'd like to give you an overview of the Early Makuria Research Project, because the pottery I will be focusing on my presentation came from this project, so I'm not sure it's all of participants are familiar with the project. So I will start with a quick overview. Okay, my presentation works. So Early Makuria Research Project investigated the beginning of Kingdom of Makuria, which began in the territory of ancient Nubia between the 3rd and 4th Cataract in the time of 4th, 6th century. And for this period, little is known about the settlements. It's only cemeteries are our main source of information. So, and we are focusing in our excavated program during this project. We're focusing on 3 sites: El-Detti and Tanqasi. So the first excavations was in El-Zuma. Of the results of the work have been published, so I don't want to go to the details, but only in a nutshell. So we discovered and recognized 3 types of tumuli. So the first type, the largest one, with U-shaped shaft, 3 or 4 additional burial chamber, with 1 main burial chamber with a tunnel leading to this burial chamber. The second type, with U-shaped or L-shaped shaft and 3 or 4, even 5 additional burial chambers, and the smallest type with rectangular shaft and only burial chamber. So the second, and quick view of the pottery, so bowls, cups. This is typical set from El-Zuma. I will come back to this pottery later. The second site was El-Detti, and it's also dates from 4th to the 6th century, and it's quite vast cemetery with more than 50 tumuli, but unfortunately most of them was destroyed. And the main purpose of our investigation was check the architecture of the tumuli and compare it with the Zuma. So 7 tumuli was selected to the analysis, and we discovered only 1 with type 2 with L-shaped shaft and 2 additional burial chamber and 1 main additional burial chamber and 1 main burial chamber. And 6 of them was the smallest one, type 3, with 1 rectangular shaft and 1 burial chamber. So this is the typical set from El-Detti, and of course it's confirmed that the site was from the same period and the same time like at Zuma. And I have to the distance between Zuma and Detti, it's more or less 6 or 7 kilometers. So probably, maybe this sites works simultaneously. We don't know, of course, but the pottery and other artifacts are really similar to Zuma. And the last site under the Early Makuria Research Project was Tanqasi. It started in 2018, but unfortunately unfinished because of war. It's the really large cemetery, contains more than 250 graves in various in size, but the site had a longer tradition and functioned probably from the late Meroitic period. And the structures are similar or differ, like in Zuma case. For example, here we have a construction from the probably late Meroitic period with long ramp and rectangular shaft with L-shape or kidney shape burial chamber, and also construction similar like in Zuma with type 2 with U-shaped shaft and 3 burial chambers. So the pottery confirms that the tumuli was used from the late Meroitic period. We have examples from late Meroitic period, but also during the early Makuria period. However, only during this our project, only dozen graves were excavated, but we have to remember that we have more than 200 tumuli, so we don't have a complete picture of the cemetery. So another important issue are the handmade pottery workshops. When I started to work with this workshop, for me, important was find the workshop close to the vicinity of our excavated area. So we found one workshop in the Hasira, it's 3 kilometers from Zuma, one workshop in Tanqasi, one workshop is a little bit not so close to Zuma, but in Karima, and one in Algar, it's close to Tanqasi, but unfortunately this workshop was closed during our investigation. So we documented handmade pottery in this vicinity of Zuma, and what was important to me that this observation from these workshops can learn and understand better pottery process. And what I want to do to compare this observation with the archaeological material. So as I mentioned earlier, we don't have any information about the settlements and pottery workshop from the time of early Makuria, so it was very important to me. So at this moment, I want to focus on the pottery production, because this workshop have already been published in article and also in movies, which are able to look at the YouTube channel. So I would like to remind only the most important element for this presentation. So the first workshop is in the Hasira, it's 6 kilometers from Zuma. The workshop was situated in the potter's household. Zahara made a vessel in the depression in the ground, which was covered with a rag. During the shaping process, in the first stage, a lump of clay was beaten with a pebble and shaped with a paddle-like tool made from the hairbrush. And she makes the lower part of the vessel. Of course, using the rag, give us the effect of impressed pattern on the external surface. So later, when the lower part of the vessel dried, she built the vessel walls from the clay coils. And later, when the vessel dried again, she rubbed ochre into the surface to produce the red color. So the second workshop is Mohammed workshop in Karima. And here we have 3 stages of pottery production. In the first stage, the lower part of the vessel was shaped on the mold. When the bottom part dried, he built the walls using the clay coils. And later, vessels dried again. And in the third stage, he created the rim also using the clay coils. But one thing, he used the flat area, not the impression in the ground, not the depression in the ground. And the third, our workshop, this is Abbas. It's close to the souk in Tanqasi. The vessel was in the first stage of the shaping process. Potters used only his hand and circled the vessels while forming the walls, like here. And later, when the upper part of the vessels dried, he shaped the lower part of the vessel and sealed the bottom. And what I want to show, how these all observations from the modern pottery workshop helped me observe and analyze the pottery from the early Makuria period. So, the technique of beating clay with a pebble leaves characteristic marks on the internal surface. Analogical mark we can observe in archaeological our material from Zuma. This is the examples from Zuma. And using the wrap or other materials to cover the depression also leaves characteristic patterns on the external surface. So we know that this method of using depression in the ground was also noted in C group and Kerma culture, so it's not the new technique. Another example, shaping the vessels on the mold. So, like in Karima workshop, I recorded only a few examples with that technique in material from Zuma. That's the inner surface is smooth and only irregularities are the reflection on the unevenness on the mold itself. So the internal surface is quite smooth. The coiling technique, so adding coils of clay to build the walls of the vessels, also leaves characteristic marks, but they are visible mainly on the breaks of the vessels. And also traces of vessels repair. Here we have examples from the Algarve, this modern pottery workshop, but it was closed, so I made only a few pictures. But repairs in mending holes drilled in the walls along the vessel fracture. Similar examples we can observe from Zuma. Here we have examples on the walls wall, but also we have traces of repairing of the neck of the bottles. So now I want to speak a little bit more about the mobility issues. I know that various theories, different approaches has been widely discussed in the literature. That's why I put the slide here. And I don't want to focus here on discussing all these theories because it's a really extensive topic. But in my presentation, I would like to focus on the sociological approach. So at first, I thought that it will be easy and pleasant task, but quickly I changed my mind. And I have to admit that it's quite a new topic for me. I'm talking, of course, about the sociology. So I have to start with some definition as an introduction. So we can distinguish two most essential aspects of such mobility. Human mobility, in a nutshell, is the propensity to relocate. Professional mobility, adapting to the market demands or community demands. So because human mobility is more complex, because we can distinguish horizontal and vertical mobility. So I would like to focus right now on this kind of mobility. So Horizontal mobility refers to movement of individuals or groups within the same social status or hierarchy level. For individuals, a change does not necessarily mean changing their position in the social hierarchy. Individuals can move between categories, for example, occupational categories of the same level of the hierarchy. So this kind of mobility could be associated with the change job without a change of position. For example, potter changes his residence, but will continue to do the work of the potter. But vertical mobility involves the movement of individuals between levels of social hierarchy. Vertical mobility can consist on upward movement in the social hierarchy, doesn't mean promotion, on downward, degradation. So, and we can speak here about two different kinds of vertical mobility. Intrageneration mobility involves the movement between different levels of the hierarchy. The individual raises the level of his education, acquires new qualification, gets rich, and consequently move over the years to higher position in the social hierarchy. This is promotion or degradation within the limits of one generation. But the intergeneration mobility, this is the movement of entire social categories in relation to the position held by their parents. Various factors can affect these changes. For example, there are changes between children and their parents. Specific individuals are talented or hardworking, while others are lazy. Some parents can't and want to invest in their children's education, while others cannot. Opportunities to access education, etc., etc. So, to sum up, horizontal mobility, we have some kind of mobility in the same social status, but we have some kind of movement, maybe relocation. But horizontal mobility, vertical mobility, we have a movement between the hierarchy level in the same generation or between the two different generations, like parents and children. So professional mobility is much more easier to understand. That this is ability to adapt to demands of the labor market, readiness to change job, profession, improving on expanding professional qualification. And the main reasons for such professional mobility could be unemployment, development of new technologies, principles of a free market economy. So I know that you may be a little bit overwhelmed by this definition, so I will try to explain it with the examples of our potters. So I want to back to our potters, but this time I want to focus on the potters itself. So Zahara comes from small village, Jarbat el-Sheikh in northern Kordofan. She moved to Omdurman when she met her future husband from the Hasira. They got married and moved to the Hasira. When her husband passed away, Zahara returned to Omdurman and only occasionally visited family living in the north. According to Zahara, there is no local pottery tradition in her native Jarbat el-Sheikh region. She learned to make pottery from other women in Omdurman who were taught the craft in Fitaha. So Zahara learned pottery production for herself as a part-time job. She makes vessels in her household area. She does not have a regular pottery workshop. She makes only one kind of vessels. So we can observe here mobility of population, horizontal mobility, relocation, the personal factors of the potter. She moved to her husband's village. Professional mobility. The women from whom Zahara learned pottery production learned the craft in Omdurman. Zahara also learned the profession in Omdurman because she needs additional income. This is, for her, it was the source of additional income. Mohammed. Mohammed and his family came from Tanqasi, where they migrated from Chad. He learned the pottery making technique from a potter who came from Sennar to teach him. He studied for 6 months. He is only potter in his family, and he has no tradition of pottery making. He works alone. He works in his workshop is situated in Karima. This is the regular workshop, but he also visits other places where he makes custom pottery. He travels only when he has an order to fill. When he leaves, he takes the mold. He never carries any material or tools. He makes a few forms. He chose to become a potter because of the additional income. And also we can observe here mobility of population, change of residence, migration, people from Chad to Sudan. Horizontal mobility, a potter from Sennar teaches the craft outside the home and outside the area where he learned the pottery. Vertical mobility, only Mohammed is involved in pottery. And professional mobility, of course, then additional income. And what we have in the Abbas case. So here, pottery is a family tradition. Abbas learned it from his father, who also learned the craft for his father. According to his memory, they all came from Tanqasi, and the pottery making tradition is from Tanqasi. Only men in his family were involved in pottery. He has 7 daughters and 3 sons, but unfortunately, he is the last with the pottery tradition because no one wanted to continue this work. The pottery workshop is located near the souk in Tanqasi. This is the regular workshop and operates all year long. But Abbas occasionally travels to another place where he makes products in order, and in which case he takes his tools. He makes also a few forms. And what we can observe here, there is no mobility of population, horizontal mobility or vertical mobility, because he doesn't change his place of living. He does the same job as his father, and this is the family tradition. And one mobility which we can observe is professional mobility. Abbas leaves for work to improve his financial situation. And how can we use this knowledge when we working with archaeological materials? I want to give you some scenarios that may have occurred in ancient time, but of course they are only hypotheses, and we have no way to prove how it was. But this approach helps me to understand better the pottery I work with. So returning to our material. So looking at these bowls and cups, we have the same technique, we made same fabric, the same surface treatment, varnish. The vessel could be well executed with varnish or poorly executed. In comparison to this, with these bowls, so we have the same technique, of course, a little bit different shape, the same fabric, and a different surface treatment because these bowls are well polished. So the first scenario, maybe may have been several locals workshop. One workshop produced all these bowls and cups, or maybe 2 different workshops. One workshop which produced cups and bowls with varnish, and second one with polished bowls. And maybe carefully executed vessels, it was some kind of master craftsman, tutor, or poorly executed student, or maybe we have a situation that we have a workshop of high quality pottery and low quality pottery, because maybe the potters were lazy or something like that, like in Mohammed and Abbas case. In Mohammed case, we have a newcomer teacher and local student, because Mohammed was from Tanqasi and learn use with local product. So, or maybe like situation like in Abbas case, that local potter, Abbas father, and local potter student Abbas. So we can think about human, horizontal, and professional mobility. Or now jars and bowls. So when we look at the bowls, so they are different size, the same technique, the same fabric, different surface treatment, because they could have impressed pattern or varnish and slip on the external surface. In comparison to this cooking bowls, so the same manufacturing technique, so handmade, also sometimes we have impressed pattern on the external surface, sometimes slip and varnish, the same fabric, the same, of course, surface treatment, but of course, completely different type of vessel. And again, maybe we can observe several local workshops. One workshop which produced only bowls, one workshop produced only bottles, or maybe workshop produced and bottles and bowls. So maybe one workshop produced only a single type of vessels. So of course we can multiple scenarios here, whether the workshop produced, for example, several bottles of different size, or maybe perhaps produce one size of bottles. So there may be more such scenarios. But for example, Mohammed Abbas produced a few types of vessels, but Zahara produced only one type of vessel. So we can also think about human mobility, horizontal, vertical, and professional mobility. So another issue, what I wanted to discuss here, when I look at the pottery which are not common on the site. So for example, we have a few single examples of type which are not popular on the site, but was made from local clay. So, and also we can consider a few scenarios here. So the first one, newcomer potter. Potter came from another place and made a vessel to order, or in the case of Mohammed or Abbas, the potters took the tools or molds with them, but made the vessel from local material. So in this case, we can talk about the professional mobility. Scenario 2, newcomer potter changed his residence and brought his skills and new forms that were familiar to him. As Zahara, she learned the craft in Omdurman, but made the vessel in the Hasira near the Zuma. So in this case, we can also speak about the professional mobility, but also human mobility. Scenario 3, newcomer potter came to teach, potter came to another place to teach. In this case, as Mohammed, a teacher came from Sennar to Tanqasi to teach Mohammed a craft, and Mohammed learned on local products. And maybe scenario 4, potter left to learn the craft and returned with new skills. So, of course, this what I presented here is only as scenarios, so everything is hypothesis. But when I look at various publications, this always catch my attention. What was the reason for the local imitation? Why do we find a lot of or a few of them, and they're compared to the same type of important pottery, or why do we have local imitation of particular type, but we don't have imported pottery? So that's why I put it here, this kind of scenario. Maybe this is some kind of answer for that. But now I want to a little bit conclude everything what I said here, because this is a vast amount of information, and which I have presented here very generally. But the mobility of the potters depends on many factors. So human mobility, migration due to environmental, political, historical, or religious factor, professional mobility, mobility or migration in search of new technologies, skills, developments. Mobility was easy when the workshop was small, with a small numbers of forms. Large pottery workshops were stationary, but potters themselves could move to make an order or teach the craft. Large workshops were a good place for people to learn, so professional mobility could go into the direction. The specialist would go outside the workshop to teach the craft, or the students would come to the workshop to learn. So thank you very much.